Hello and welcome back to Hit or Glitch. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Tim.
And I'm Scott.
This is the GM Corner, where we give advice on running your game. Every episode, we will be pulling a suggestion from the Tome of Topics and discuss it. If you have a question or want to suggest something for us to talk about, leave a comment below, and we will add it to the tome. This week,
Tim will be pulling a topic.
Oh, okay, yeah. I will be pulling a topic. Let's go with that. Let's see. Topic number 1. GM's Corner. Weaving a character's backstory.
So this is weaving a character's backstory into the game.
Oh boy.
I actually gave some advice in a forum on this not too long ago. And weaving a character's backstory into the storyline gives a greater sense of immersion, but is not always necessary. And it also depends on the kind of game you run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I like weaving them in for the couple of games I've run. Currently running one on Monday nights.
Yeah.
What I do is I like them to give me some sort of backstory for their character, maybe some magic items that they start out with, and then I'll run them through a small, like what could be a one-shot area, just so I can get to know, okay, this is how they're playing their character, and this is kind of their backstory. And then they start making in their heads, and then I can take that while we're in our one-shot over this 2 or 3 weeks, and then weave a story around that based upon the world that they're in. I like doing that more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I like to intertwine what the player characters come up with. You know, what my players have. You know, they've taken the time to say, this is where my character is coming from. As you know, I've said in articles and stuff that the main thing about role-playing games for me is that it's cooperative storytelling. So I feel like I owe it to them to weave something in there. It may not be very big, it may not be a lot, but okay, he came up with this part. You know, he came up, you know, she came up with this, you know, about the world and about what's happened. Is there a way I can use that to further the plot?
Yeah. And my example when I gave this advice in the forum was, if it's a game where events are going to proceed no matter what your characters are going to do, then their backstory can be woven in a way that's not necessarily pertinent to the plot.
That's true.
Or if you're playing the kind of game where your players are central and nothing happens without their doing something, in that kind of a game, then you can more firmly weave their backstory into the game.
Well, and an example of that, several years ago, I had the published 3-5 books that took us through the War of the Lance from the Dragonlance Chronicles. And I got a bunch of my friends. I had biggest group I ever ran. I had 9 players.
Oof.
And one of them, but they took the places of the heroes of the Lance. So instead of Tanis and Flint Fireforge and Tasselhoff Birdfoot going through these things, these characters went through these events. And one of them had never read the Dragonlance books, and he made a human fighter who was looking for his older brother. So I made his older brother take the place of Kitiara, the Blue Dragon High Lord, and wove that his backstory and his search, left clues as to where his brother was leading up to that reveal that Kitiara was, but instead of Kitiara was his brother that he had been looking for.
Nice.
Cool. So
I bet that was a bit of a shock for him.
But when you can do things like that, I think it makes the overall story so much better, so much more memorable for yourself and for the players. You know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I usually, at least at the start of a game, I try to weave the most recent thing for that character in right away. In the Star Wars game, it's one of my favorite games I've ever ran. It's one of my favorite GM moments is in that game.
The one we had for the podcast?
No.
No. Okay.
No. It was a Saga Edition Star Wars game. And it was. We can get into that another time for when we talk about favorite GM moments. But a friend of mine's character was a low-level Imperial functionary, and I got to weave that in very early on and plant the seeds for the conflict that would later unfold into the betrayal of one of the NPCs of the party, which led to the most visceral reaction I've ever seen from a player and an NPC when the potential came for their vengeance. So yeah, it can be a lot of fun, and like I said, it definitely helps with immersion.
Mm-hmm.
If your character is just in this for the money, if that's sort of your motivation, if that's the only thing you can come up with, there's not a lot for you to grab onto as a player.
Mm-hmm.
And as a GM, it can be difficult to find something that's going to get at that player.
Yeah, that really, the only reason you should weave your character, the character's backstories, is if you're going to have a longer game. If you're going to have a shorter game, then you don't need to worry about it. Your players are here to play a game and have fun. For a longer game, you need something that's going to grab them and pull them in to be able to sit down and play for this for weeks on end.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is, as a player, if you are taking your this one character that you play, if you're taking it from table to table, game to game, GM to GM, and you are weaving your own meta game, your own meta plot story for this character, when you sit down at that table, it's sort of your job to weave that character's backstory into that GM's campaign, into that play session.
Which can be difficult.
Yeah, it's up to you to be like, whatever situation is placed before you at the table, you say things like, oh, well, I took care of something like this years ago. I know what we can do. If you come at it from that perspective, then you become a leader at the table just by default. Because whether it's true or not, the other players are going to go, oh, well, they know what they're doing then.
This is true.
Or you can go the opposite way and decide or have it built into your backstory that you are terrified of this creature. And so the GM says, you come to a town and they're being bedeviled by a blue dragon. And it so happened that a blue dragon killed your family. While the quest for vengeance might be real and you might want it,
Might be scared.
Is that something your character really wants to do? And you can get into that and explore that. I hope this was helpful for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like, comment, subscribe. Like I said, comment below if you have any questions about running a game. We'll see you in the universe.
Yep. See y'all later.